Thank you very much. I'd like to start with thanking Dario and Susan for having me here today. And just to share a little bit, I'm extra happy to be here because yesterday I was skiing in Kitzbühel, and coming down the mountain I got a double flat tire. But now the kids are safely back home and the car is in the workshop. So, and I'm here, so all good, all good. All right, let's see if this works. Oh yeah, the recipe for business messaging adoption is today's theme. Start a bit with an intro of the topic, look at some key considerations, then look at the value chain perspective and the ecosystem. Obviously we're at MEF, so we have to look at the ecosystem perspective. And then me and Nick will do a Q&A at the end. So this was today's theme, and ultimately the final part here. What do we as an industry need to do to ensure that business messaging in all its glory takes its rightful place in the customer engagement firmament? Someone very eloquent put that together. But really, what do we need to make business messaging happen in an even bigger way than it has already? And for me, it's really about fostering the next S-curve. SMS has had a fantastic run over the past 20 years. Growth is slowly slowing. It's still growing, but it's not at all like it was 5 or 10 years ago when it was really exploding. At the same time, we have, I would say, predominantly WhatsApp and RCS, which holds great promise for the future. And I believe these are the two ecosystems that will be dominating the next generation of messaging, especially outside some key Asian markets. We have good growth already today on WhatsApp, and we see early signs on RCS. And then obviously with Apple's announcement a couple of months ago, I think that's a real game changer. So I believe that's what we will be looking at in the future here. But what do we need to do as an industry to make this happen? First of all, we need to realize that brands face very different challenges depending on what it is they do or their customer does. So based on the use case, geography, different countries are very, very different. And ultimately demographics. Who is the customer of the brands? These kind of three dimensions are totally formatting for the challenge that an enterprise faces. If we start with the use case, there are 4 main CPaaS use cases. You have marketing. You have something called, that I've chosen here to call utility. I'm using Meta's nomenclature. So it's also called service delivery, notifications, alerts, reminders. Those little messages that kind of makes a service work. Don't forget your appointment tomorrow. Here's the code to pick up your package. Those kind of things. Then you have at the base, you have authentication. So 2-factor authentication is a huge SMS use case, as all of you know. And then last but not least, we have care, which today doesn't really exist in SMS. This is when a user initiates contact with the brand, and this has so far been the home of contact centers and web chat. But I believe with the next generation of messaging, will also come into this space, and it's a great growth opportunity. And these use cases, if you look at, this is data from Mobile Squared, if you look at global SMS today, it splits like this between the 3 use cases or use case families. But they will have very different kind of evolution paths. So the market is going to fragment much more than everything is SMS, even though the underlying purpose of the SMS is very different. So authentication partly will move off the SIM card altogether into web authn and IDP, things that our chairman Andrew Budd is very engaged in with his company iProve. Part of it will move into voice, very much cost-driven. Part of it will move into silent network authentication, so dedicated APIs that the mobile operators provides to do specifically user authentication. And part of it will move into business-initiated conversational channels, so predominantly WhatsApp, RCS, and Viber. It needs to be business-initiated because that's the flow of a verification, as opposed to user-initiated, which is the requirement for something like Apple Messages for Business or Facebook Messenger. They're not fit for purpose for verification. If you look at marketing and utility, they won't leverage the top 3 channels here, but rather the 4th. And obviously there's huge promise to kind of improve the customer experience for these type of use cases. And then customer care will enter this space. That's a huge growth opportunity for I would say, messaging. And obviously they will leverage the various conversational channels that are out there. If you look at mobile operators, they own this part where they provide service to brands. Obviously today there's limited monetization on Flash Call, and RCS is kind of co-created together with Google. But this is where the operators play in the future. So they will no longer have a monopoly in messaging, but will have a very meaningful share of the market. The other part is obviously the OTT providers, with all the new channels that are, well, emerging is probably the wrong word, that are today established for business messaging. Transformation drivers. One is the increasing SMS cost that I'm sure has been talked about here today, which is coinciding with the emergence of affordable options. And on the back of these cost increases, you have SMS fraud, especially artificial inflation of traffic on the rise, in specific emerging markets. It's important to note, it's specifically on authentication, the cross-border portion of that, in certain emerging markets. So the part of the market that's being hit by this is less than 10% of total market. But at the same time, I don't want to diminish the problem. It's a real issue. But just to put it in perspective. And depending on the enterprise use case, they will ultimately in the future choose a different mix of channels. Let's look at the next dimension, which is geography. 3 countries, Brazil, Germany, America. The green bar is WhatsApp penetration. The 2 yellow ones is Android and iOS. And the blue ones are transactional, where I've combined 2FA or verification and utility and marketing between the different markets. The green and yellow here is market data. The blue is from Sinch, but I think we have enough of a market share for this to be relatively representative. If you then look at this, Brazil has high WhatsApp penetration and high Android penetration. So basically, an Android is a proxy for RCS, of course. So, and this has resulted in Brazil being, I would say, together with India, one of the most mature markets there is for conversational messaging. We see a lot of traction on both WhatsApp and RCS here. Germany, reasonable penetration, but the very high SMS price has kind of hampered the market for non-critical use cases. So marketing is only 8% in Germany. If you take a Western European comparison, at least for Sinch, the number is 35%. And those are very comparable markets from a buying power perspective. So marketing would be a net new addition in Germany, similar to customer care was for the whole market, which will make it more difficult to get going. It's not just moving use cases. Also, there's some hesitancy among bigger enterprises around privacy and WhatsApp. So even though there's decent penetration, we haven't really seen takeoff in Germany. Question is, will RCS be able to change this, since it's an operator-led technology? We'll see. America, we already have conversational use cases happening today on SMS. very much driven by the fact that America SMS is quite affordable. We also have quite a bit of rich content being sent, thanks to America being the only market where MMS has a meaningful position as a channel. So I would say the prerequisites in the US of brands being both, have tinkered with conversational messaging and rich messaging means it's a market that has a lot of promise. The one thing that's lacking is coverage. So RCS and WhatsApp is low here. So I think it's well known, WhatsApp is targeting America forcefully, trying to grow the base. And with Apple's decision to support RCS, all of those 58% of iOS users, I believe, will ultimately be eligible to be messaged with on RCS. So I have high hopes for the US market when it comes to this. Last but not least, demographics, know your customer. This is not all-encompassing. I just took a couple of data points to make the point. Every user is unique, lots of different preferences. Medium age difference between Japan and Nigeria is 32 years. That's huge. So what works in Japan will definitely not work in Nigeria and vice versa. If you look in the US, you see perhaps an expected demographic split when it comes to age, but then look at ethnicity, where Hispanic Americans have a much, much higher WhatsApp penetration than the rest of the country, obviously because their ties to Latin America, where WhatsApp is a huge channel. But the brand, ultimately, to succeed with mobile messaging needs to understand their customer base, and we as an industry will need to help them depending on who it is they talk to. So all of the use case, the geography, and the demographics of the brand will ultimately kind of set the foundation of what's needed from us. So if that's the start, we have here the business messaging value chain. And I believe the entire ecosystem will need to contribute to make this kind of S-curve happen in the next generation. From the mobile operators and the OTTs creating the networks to kind of the CPaaS providers and let's call them application service providers or cloud platforms that provide the software that the brands need. All of us have parts to play here. Let's look at building the foundation. What do the networks need to do? Most important, coverage. It's the single most important factor for adoption. This is why one of the key reasons why SMS was so successful. 5.1 billion users you can reach with a single channel. We have 2 billion WhatsApp users today and 1 billion RCS users. With Apple joining the party, I believe RCS will ultimately reach the same level of penetration that SMS does. And WhatsApp is growing steadily. So I think this will, over time, sort itself. Next one is cost. The brands need predictability. It needs to be affordable, and there needs to be a positive relative return on investment compared to other ways of reaching their customers, via email or what might it be. And obviously here, the price hikes on international SMS aren't helping for the next step. So mobile operators here need to think about their pricing strategy. How will they make money on RCS and data verification? It's a topic of its own. But next one, ease of use. How easy is it for an enterprise to leverage messaging? This will be part of their decision-making process, whether to adopt messaging as a key channel to reach their customers or not. I think maybe highlighting two, I believe national sender ID verification on the RCS side will be helpful. WhatsApp obviously is simpler. It's one single entity controlling the entire verification flow. And the other one is just engagement analytics. I think read receipts, which you have both on WhatsApp and RCS, is a huge step forward, especially for marketeers. Today, with delivery receipts, it's a little bit fire and forget on SMS. I have high hopes that marketeers will take a closer look at messaging with these new channels. User experience, you have tons of new, very cool features coming. I think the one that interests me the most here are payments. WhatsApp are playing with consumer-to-consumer payments in Brazil and India, and merchant payments in Singapore. Being able to transact straight out of the messaging client, I think, will be super strong. This is a couple of years ahead, I think, but it's, I think it's, for e-commerce, this will be great. Last but not least, trust. Meta has a challenge to overcome trust when it comes to privacy, I would say. They have a history of monetizing their user data, whereas carriers obviously monetize communication traffic. So that's a challenge. RCS, on the other hand, is not end-to-end encrypted. That's a challenge for the MNOs and for Google. Both of these channels promise to help with the smishing problem that we have on SMS, thanks to the sender verification step. So that's an improvement. All of these things need to work in order to basically have great foundations, great rails upon which we then can build things in the industry. And what is it then CPaaS providers, ASPs, cloud platforms need to do? I think we need an enablement software layer. This doesn't really exist. There exist campaign platforms on SMS, but they're much simpler, given SMS is more of a one-way medium, outbound. I think 98% of at least Sinch's traffic is one-way only. So the enterprises need a tech stack to manage conversations and rich media. And it entails a bunch of different things. Obviously, AI-powered bots, I think that's a topic, again, of its own, but that's going to be huge, I think, here. You can automate a lot of things that today requires people. And then if and when the bot can't handle something, you need an inbox or an integration to a contact center so that the human agent can solve the problem for the user. I think those are key kind of components in all of this. And then underpinning all of it, it's an omni-channel API so that you can access the channel or the channels that the brand needs in any particular market. Obviously very different if you're a domestic company doing business in one market only, or if you're a huge multinational bank who exists in all continents. The complexity here. That's one. The other thing that needs to happen is we need to light up the software ecosystem. The world's enterprises use various types of software depending on the business they're in and what platforms they've chosen. And these are key to adoption. Even in SMS, a lot of traffic comes through these type of systems. And with conversational messaging and rich messaging, the complexity is only going to increase. Hence, brands will need more help. And I think here, CPaaS providers who have a lot of the channel expertise will need to help the software platforms in order to get this right. Either through native integrations or simple connectors. And I think that's it. So summing up, first of all, who, where, and what is the underpinning key formatting parameters that each business will face and will kind of specify what challenge they individually have. Then you need a solid foundation, so the mobile operators and the OTTs, especially Meta and Google, need to sort all of that we saw earlier on the blue slide. And last but not least, Rails are not enough. We need APIs, purpose-built software and integrations to the existing ecosystems that all of those brands already are using today to really unlock conversational messaging and see the growth potential. I think as Sinch, you might know, we've grown a lot through acquisitions, where we have acquired companies that had this stack, either in-house or through partners. Those are the markets where we've seen the growth. Whereas other markets where we only go to market with an API today, because guess what, we haven't done all the integration that we need yet, we have a lot less traction, because the enterprises need all the help from the software stack in order to leverage this. And with that, I want to say thank you.
Thank you, Robert. That was very enlightening indeed. So every time I listen to you up on stage, I learn something. So thank you very much indeed. And I've also learned, in addition to business messaging, to drive carefully in Austria,
Yeah.
I think is the answer. So we're at Q&A time. We've got 5 minutes. There's a question down there. Just while the microphone's coming over, I've got a question myself, if that's okay. So I was going to say $1 million question, but I would say $1 billion question. With respect to business messaging, in your view, and I'm going to make this harder, this question, we'll take Apple out of the equation. For you, what would be the top 3 things that the industry, the ecosystem could do to really drive business messaging forward? And there's no restrictions here.
Yeah. I mean, the final piece here of the software stack, and also enabling the partner ecosystem, I think is the single most powerful thing we can do. Simply because these, the software stack is absolutely necessary. We've kind of empirically proved it to ourselves. And so much messaging, SMS messaging, which will convert over time, is flowing through the various software ecosystems. So for me, that is the most important thing that we should be doing. Then I think keeping SMS a affordable and trusted channel, I would say, as the second one. Again, as I said, it's a particular problem in certain markets with certain use cases, but still, you know, it's, I mean, everyone in the industry has heard about the problems with AIT, etc. And brands might not, once they put off SMS, going back to messaging might prove difficult, even though they've had problems not everywhere, but, you know, having problems somewhere might suffice. I'll stick with those 2, actually, as the answer.
That's great. I think one of our things that we need to look into, and for the, you know, for all the members at MEF as well, is bringing those software providers, you know, into this ecosystem. I think will help everybody as well. I'm a firm believer of the fight not being in here, although we're amongst competitors, the fight is definitely out there, which we can do a better job at, I'm sure. So, sorry, there was a question.
Yeah, this is Michael Becker. When do you think Apple will come out? When Apple comes out with its RCS support, will it be P2P first and then A2P, or will they do them both at the same time? Okay. And how long is that going to take?
So this is me guessing now, just to be clear. I don't have you know, any insights into what's happening in Apple. But what I think it will be supported in iOS 18, which comes in September. If Apple, you know, if history is any guide. Also, if history is a guide, if you look at iOS adoption, how fast new iOS versions are rolled out, my expectation is that 50% of iPhones will have iOS 18 come January 25, and about 80% in June 25. So I think it'll be fairly fast.
Yeah, but what about the P2P, A2P?
I think they will be supporting A2P out the gate.
Robert's certainly more of an expert than myself, but I would second that. That's exactly what I've heard secondhand, I would say, in the industry. I believe they're launching both at the same time in September. So quite exciting. Any more questions? No? Okay, I think we've run over ever so slightly, so we'll probably draw it to a close there. Thank you ever so much again, Robert. That was fantastic.
Thank you.